Blockbuster, the winner of Adweek's Creative Podcast of the Year, returns.
Film is a hobby, not a career.
I know, Dad.
James Cameron? James Cameron.
A movie for your ears.
James Cameron.
What, me? No.
This isn't what I envisioned.
It's a bad idea, okay?
About the world's most ambitious filmmaker.
It has to be perfect.
Just say, I'm the king of the world.
What? Why would I yell that?
Blockbuster. Get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Shelved Film Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. Now, I've always been somebody who spent a lot of time on the internet, as I think most people our generation are, but I've never really gotten deep into any kind of internet communities, except for one time there was a old movie website called screened.com that used to be part of a whiskey media conglomerate, is what they called. It was a video game website called Giant Bomb, an anime site, a comic site, and then they had a movie site called Screened. And the two people who ran it, Alex Navarro and Matt Rory, they used to do a feature called Defending Your Movie. And it was just like a little video segment that they would do every now and then, where it was just them standing in front of a green screen, talking about a movie that they really liked that maybe wasn't considered like a good movie in the zeitgeist, or like maybe it was something they felt was like a little underrated or whatever. And it was a feature that always like captured my imagination, and was something that I like. It was always my favorite video that they would put up. And I got super deep into the community forums and stuff, and I would do the same thing because they had like a blog function on the website. And I would do Defending Your Movie blog posts, where I would pick a movie that I really like, and then I would share them on the community spotlight and stuff. And I was pretty well involved, and it was kind of the only time on the internet I got super deep into any kind of community. And eventually the website went away, They stopped doing it. The website doesn't exist anymore. The only way you can really find any of the content is on like a Wayback Machine or something. But I don't think any of the video content really exists anywhere. But I always had a lot of fun on that website. I would check it every day. I would post in the forums and stuff, and I've always missed it. And I've always wanted to bring back the Defending Your Movie feature. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. I'm sitting down with a friend of mine, Adam Condra, and we are going to sit down and defend our movie, which is a little film from 2012 called Lockout, which is a Guy Pearce action vehicle that we both really like and always felt should have got more attention. And we kind of sit down and talk about the movie and maybe, why it went the way it did and just what we love about it. And I had a lot of fun doing this feature, and I am definitely going to be doing it more in the future. I already know some of the movies that I want to talk about. I'm trying to reach out to a lot of my friends about movies they want to talk about, and this is actually a good opportunity if you want to be on the show, and maybe we're friendly on Twitter. Go ahead and shoot me a DM, shoot me an email at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com about a movie that maybe you want to defend, and we'll bring it on and do Defending Your Movie. It's I want to do as many of these as I can, just because it is one of my favorite aspects of movies, is kind of shining a spotlight on ones I don't think get enough attention. But so what's going to follow is the discussion I had with Adam. And I gave him a chance to promote stuff at the end, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I can't remember if he promoted everything, but I just want to point out that he does have a comedy album that you can find on Spotify and iTunes and stuff, called Back When I Had Hair. And I really enjoy it. It's something that he wanted to do for a long time. And, he finally put together a set and went out and recorded an album, and I think it's really funny. I've listened to it like 3 times. So be sure to check that out. And I'm pretty sure he donates portions of the proceeds every now and then to like different charities and stuff, just because he's that great of a guy. So be sure to check that out. Also, you can follow him on Twitter at Contrarian. Pretty sure he pitches that at the end of the show. But also, be sure to follow us on the Twitters at Shelved Podcast and on Instagram at Shelved Podcast. Be sure to check out our Patreon, where we have some really awesome rewards. I've completely revamped the reward system there. So be sure to check out patreon.com/shelved, and the link is also in the show notes. Also, we have a merch store, which the link for that is also in the show notes. Belowthecollar.com. Search for the Shelved Film Podcast, and you'll find our merch. We got some shirts. We got a mug. And I actually just got some really cool new designs that should be going up soon, where we're doing the show title in the form of like famous movie titles. The first one's going to be going up is probably the Back to the Future one. I really like that. There's also a Predator one, just because like Predator is one of my favorite movies that's coming, and a Matrix one that I was tinkering with. I've posted pictures of these on the Instagram and the Twitter, so if you want to see what they look like. And I've actually printed one out, and it looks really good. So probably going to have those new shirts going up real soon, so be sure to check out that merch store. And I'll definitely be posting the links on the social media. But enough about that. Got all the promotion and everything out of the way. Now let's listen to me and Adam defend our movie. So, when do you think the last time you had watched this movie was?
I actually remember this exactly. It was I was house sitting in town at a very nice house, and there was nothing to do. Like, it was an old couple that I was house sitting for, and they had like no like TV or anything except for a DVD player, so I had to go to Redbox to get all my entertainment. And so I watched this as soon as it came out on DVD, and I guess that would have been 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
I think it's 2012. So I've only seen it once, and I had not seen it until just a few days ago again.
Yeah, that's actually the same for me. I saw it when it came out, hadn't seen it again.
Yeah, and it was one of those movies where, you know, I thought I really liked this at the time I watched it, and I always kind of, you know, I always had this idea about it that, you know, if it was ever on TV or something, or if it hopped on streaming or anything like that, I would just be able to throw it on, because it's kind of like a perfect, you know, pick it up and put it down kind of movie.
Oh yeah, I actually watched it this morning to prepare for this, and I was like, I had forgotten how quick this movie is. Yeah. I mean, they're into the prison and into the main plot within, I think, 10 or 12 minutes or something like that. It's just super expedient. Yeah, I thought it was going to be like a 2 hours or so movie, you know, like big action movies of the day usually are, but it's like a straight 90 minutes. Like, you're in, you're out, you have a great time. Yeah. And I was watching this again in 2020, like it felt kind of weird because, you know, I watched it the first time 8 years ago, and I was surprised by how much of it I remembered, which is really by design. I mean, it's an incredibly simple film. Yeah.
But it also kind of struck me that this movie is kind of the prototype for the Netflix model right now.
You think?
Which is, yeah, I think so, exactly, because you've got a concept with a pretty low ceiling in terms of, you know, budget and just what's going to engage the viewer, right? And then you compensate for that with a really good cast. So, you know, they got Guy Pearce and they got Peter Stormare and a bunch of recognizable faces, and they're there to kind of elevate what's really kind of just a B-movie plot. And, you know, I think about other stuff that's released on Netflix recently, especially this year, stuff like Extraction or the Old Guard, which came out yesterday, which I haven't watched yet.
Yeah, I actually think I might watch that tonight.
Yeah, I hear that's kind of in the same wheelhouse. It's like, you know, it's a watchable movie, but it's got a really good cast behind it, and so it just makes it, you know, just a little bit more interesting. And this movie, I think, you know, I would say, if I'll put it to you this way. I was thinking about it this morning. When I logged this movie on Letterboxd, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. But in my head, I felt like I was giving it a 3.5 out of 3.5. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I kind of get what you mean, because when I logged it on Letterboxd, I do a thing. I don't do half stars. So for me, if a thing ever feels like a half, I usually just bump it up if I feel like it. So when I logged it, I did a 4 out of 5 in my heart, knowing like this is a 3-star movie, but I love it at a 4.
Yeah, and so I guess my point is it's got like a certain ceiling on it, right? But even the flaws that kind of drag the ceiling down don't make it a worse movie,
Yeah.
It's like I can point to stuff, if you were to ask me and say, what would you do to turn this from a 3.5-star ceiling to a 5-star ceiling? I would say, well, I would like to expand the backstory between Guy Pearce's character and the guy who dies in the beginning. I would like to change the kind of prison assault dogfight at the end with all the spaceships, because it's kind of pointless and just noisy.
Yeah, and not much really comes out of it even.
Yeah, and I'd like to give the budget maybe another 20 or 30 million just to make it look a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now, and the budget is only listed at $20 million, which is nothing for a movie like this.
It looks really good for 20 million.
Yeah. Like if you like Deadpool, I believe was a $40 million movie, and they squeezed a lot out of that. And I always go back to, even though they're not good movies, like all of the Resident Evil movies had 30 to 40 million budgets, and like this being half of those is just like kind of mind blowing. Yeah,
well, that's the thing, right? It's like watching this movie, I was like, wow, this is not aged well, especially the
like
the motorcycle chase at the very beginning.
Yes.
Yeah. Like the motorcycle chase at the very beginning looks like something out of Spy Kids. Like, it's just abysmal.
It's so bad, and I was almost wondering, like, is it on purpose? Like, when I saw it the first time, I remember having that feeling about that particular scene.
Yeah, it's too short to be on purpose, I think, because they don't really linger on it longer than they have to. It's just he gets from point A to point B.
Yeah,
and they tried to make it look exciting. But hearing that it only cost $20 million to make this film, I'm actually kind of impressed that they managed to get both that and the dogfight at the end to fit into the movie.
Yeah, and I noticed particularly with the scene at the end where they parachute back on to Earth or whatever. There are no like real location shots in this movie. Like that was clearly a green screen background, because and they don't even show it for very long. Clearly the apartment in the beginning, or the hotel room, whatever it is, that's a set. The prisons is all sets and stuff, and then it's just like a lot of them on green screen for external shots. Yeah,
it's funny because that exchange of like they land on a highway after they come down. That exchange looks exactly like one of the freeway exchanges in Los Angeles, where they did a bunch of. I think there's a season of 24 where they land a plane on that highway.
Oh, really?
And so, yeah. So it would not surprise me at all if, this was I guess this was French or American production. I don't know where
it's
Luc
listed
Besson.
as France.
Okay, yeah. So they farm out their effect shots to a studio in LA, and they say, we're going to have them land on a highway, and then the LA people are like, oh, we know exactly what to model this after, and we'll just, use, even though it's supposed to be like Washington D.C. or something, for the government's purposes or whatever.
They never really specify where any of it takes place, right? The only thing we really get is they say Union Station is the train station.
Yeah, so we know. I mean, that's New York, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Am I thinking of? Okay, yeah. So there's that, and then you would assume, I guess, the Secret Service stuff. the Oval Office is an underground bunker now.
Yeah, I noticed that.
There's a lot of. I would love to know like what other variations on the screenplay there were from this, because it feels like there are several points at which the storytelling was much more ambitious, and then Besson or whoever was pulling the strings behind this said, no, you can streamline this even further and just turn it into something that the viewer doesn't have to think about.
Yeah. Just for reference, the movie does take place in 2079. I just saw that. So
that was the other funny thing, is that pops up in the title. It says 2079, and I was looking at it thinking, there is no way we have any of this 60 years from now, you know?
No. Like, just that exterior shot of, like, the White House, it's, like, kind of built into this almost, like, cyberpunk-looking environment.
Yeah.
Like, it's you don't get a lot of views of the future, but the stuff they have is pretty ambitious.
Yeah, it feels like a movie that was a lot more ponderous and kind of high-minded about what the future is going to be like and sort of what the state of America is, and you know why there's all these extra security measures at the White House, and what exactly is the intrigue and the plot between Guy Pearce and his older friend. It feels like there was so much more depth to this, and then they said, no, if you want to get this movie made, just take all the depth out of it and just make it as straightforward as possible. And I think it's a credit to mainly to the cast, but it's also a credit to the simplicity of the movie beyond that it still manages to work despite getting rid of all the stuff that would have made it more interesting, you know?
Yeah, like when I finished the movie, I realized, there's all this talk about the briefcase, and like we never are really quite clear what's even in the briefcase. Obviously, there's the swerve with it at the end. And then it's also like we don't know anything about the mission that he's on in the beginning or what the MacGuffin is even for. It's just like, oh, we learned that like a guy is selling secrets at the end. So you assume it's, classified information of some kind. But there's just so little attention given to any of that just to get these people on the space station and have them shoot stuff.
Yeah. And I think the reason the movie gets away with that is because if they strip away the intrigue, all you've got left is Guy Pearce just being very entertaining.
Extremely entertaining.
Yeah, I think they knew that was all they needed to really carry this film. Is if you say, no, we don't need some kind of Tom Clancy-esque subterfuge and intrigue and all that. Let's just make this a character study in a character that is extremely familiar to audiences. There are a ton of movies that have, wisecracking, even chain-smoking buff dudes like this. They're a dime a dozen. But I think it's made so much better just for the fact that it's Guy Pearce doing it.
Yeah.
And he's, like, perfectly suited to the material, but when you watch it, you realize he hasn't really done a movie like this ever.
In sense that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, he went from this to the next year he played the bad guy in a Marvel movie. So it was kind of strange. It was kind of strange to see him hop from like low budget, lowbrow to high budget, lowbrow, But
also the same year he was in Prometheus. Granted, under a bunch of makeup and all that stuff, but
yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also, if you look at his career, he started out, I forget what the movie is, but he plays the transvestite guy. I can't remember what it is. It's something he did in Australia when he was real young.
Yeah.
And then he moves on from that to stuff like LA Confidential and Memento and The Proposition and this kind of thing. And he never really sticks inside one genre. And
no.
It's really cool just in and of itself to watch him kind of bulk up and get really low down and dirty and just be kind of sleazy, right? I mean, we should talk about that as well. But,
yeah. I've been putting off the character talk for like later because I know we're going to spend a lot on that, but
yeah, but to watch Guy Pearce just kind of, to see what his version of slumming it is, right?
Yeah.
Is just a lot of fun. And he clearly is enjoying himself. He doesn't look like he's collecting a paycheck either.
No, it honestly seems like everybody is like, because this movie does have a hell of a cast, like all around.
Yeah.
And everybody seems to be, it is, like you could say, a lot of actors would look at it like, oh, I'm slumming it, I'm doing the action movie. But nobody seems to be acting like that.
No, not at all. Like even Maggie Grace, who I haven't seen her in much past this. Like I remember she was in some stuff around like
she was in the Taken movies. She was in all the Taken movies. Right. She did a season of Californication, which is my favorite television show, and she was really good in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but since then, I I mean, I haven't kept up with Luc Besson much. I know he put out Lucy and Anna and a couple other
Yeah, I think Anna's
female-led
his most
action
recent
type
movie.
stuff. Yeah. But I haven't seen her in much besides this, but she clearly knows exactly what he wants and is like committed to the bit.
Yeah.
And this could have been a situation where it's like, hey, we got someone from the CW who's trying to crack into movies, and she's just kind of, whiny and self-righteous or whatever, playing this president's daughter character. And I think Grace saves that kind of read on the material by being super sincere about her character's principles. They have that bit where Snow is trying to kind of get her to pay attention to the way her father acts.
Yeah.
Because he knows that her father doesn't care about these prisoners, and she's kind of naive to think that he's trying to use her as leverage to help everybody. And so you get to watch her go through that transformation of realizing, hey, I love my dad. I also think it's really scummy that he just wants to get me out of here and not everyone else.
Yeah.
And if you've got a lesser actress, that doesn't carry through as well. Which is fortunate because she's really the only female in the film. And you would hate to see that kind of thing, spoiled.
Yeah,
right?
there's like one other female role, but she gets kind of like taken out pretty early on in the beginning, so...
Yeah, and they do a really good job. I guess let's just jump into character stuff because we're dancing around it too much. But this is watching this, early on in the film when they're first together, when he meets her, and then he has to, change her appearance to make her less of a target. Yeah. That whole scene, I'm watching it and thinking, wow, you could never do this in 2020. Like all these jokes that they're doing, and he's just being a complete bore.
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. And then by the end of the film, I was like, no, they actually built a really solid relationship based off that.
Yeah,
which is that
you kind of watch them, tolerate each other for the first little bit, and then watching them kind of start to make sense to each other as the movie goes on.
Yeah, and they go from like, he's being kind of sleazy and lurid around her. And
there's the
like,
one moment specifically when they first meet where she kind of like they fall down and she lands on his crotch and he's like, oh no, you don't have to do that or whatever. And I was like, ooh, that's that was the one moment today where I was like, maybe not. Yeah,
and it feels like, okay, they're doing an 80s throwback thing, like this is the kind of crap that would happen, whatever.
Exactly.
But it's funny to watch her like flip the tables on him when he's kind of made these sort of lewd remarks about her in that kind of situation, and then she doesn't let it deter her from trying to use him to save the rest of the prisoners.
Yeah.
Which in turn shows him that she's actually smart and means business, and then he goes from being annoyed by that to committing to actually helping her out. And so I don't know. It just felt weirdly mature in a way that it doesn't feel like at the beginning. Because I think if you had done something like this in 2020, it would be a very clear situation of here's a guy who's a sexist jerk, and then the woman is going to spend the rest of the movie putting him in his place, and that's what happens here. But it's a much more
subtle.
That path of growth happens together rather than her forcing it onto him.
Yeah.
Because they have to rely on each other to survive throughout the rest of the station. And so it feels like instead of one character kind of forcing a change on another, they have to sort of go back and forth, even though she's the one who's trying to get power over him and convince him that he has to help her out, which culminates when she launches the escape pod and doesn't go.
Yeah, that was one of the moments as you were making this point, I was thinking of two specific moments. The first one is after his buddy Mace dies, and they kind of have that little moment where he's just like, it's just another person, like whatever, but he's clearly upset about it. And her kind of coming at him, and the way he responds to her is like, oh, let's see who you are when you have to sacrifice something for real or whatever. But then also the moment when they get to the escape pod and they open it and he sees that it's just meant for one person, and he doesn't he doesn't even like kind of let on for a second of like he knows he's screwed as soon as he opens that door, but he's just like, all right, you get in, you go, and he's like, I'll be right behind you.
Yeah, because he doesn't know at that point that there's the suits in the bay, right?
Yeah, no, that comes up later.
Okay, yeah. Because that whole thing, it's interesting when she comes out. You would expect him to be like, well, I guess we're just suiciding ourselves on this shipwright. But it's even different in that moment as well, because immediately you've got the villains who finally, they at this point in the movie they'd been sort of just stumbling around for like half an hour.
Yeah. And
then they finally, not only does she raise the stakes by getting rid of the escape pod, immediately the villains turn around and say, no, these are the actual stakes, and they kill everybody.
Yeah. And I think she gets captured like immediately after that as well.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, that's just a nice moment where the script is, zigging and zagging where you don't expect it to go, which, doesn't, it's not like the entire film is like that. It's still a straightforward kind of B action movie, but it is nice to see how the stakes get elevated by the stuff that the characters can't control.
Yeah. Speaking about just like the way how it is, just we talk about it's like a basic script. Are you aware that they got sued over this movie because John Carpenter said like, hey, this is just Escape from New York, and they lost that lawsuit because they said there was enough similarities.
Oh wait, so they lost to John Carpenter?
Yeah. It didn't say like what they lost, like if they had to pay royalties or whatever, but there was a lawsuit and they did not win.
Oh, that's bizarre. I don't know how you. I need to look into this because I don't know how you adjudicate something like that unless.
I think you just look at the basic plots of what is Escape from New York about. It's about a convict, Snake Plissken, being sent into an area controlled by bad guys to rescue the president's daughter. And it's the same thing, just New York is replaced with a space station.
Yeah. See, this is where whatever their original script was, with more political intrigue and stuff, probably could have saved them from that.
Yeah, probably.
And I wonder how the legality of that works as well. Because did this lawsuit happen before or after the film was released?
After, I believe. Okay,
yeah. See, that makes sense because I wonder, if you're going into court, you can obviously take whatever script you want in there, whether it's, because it's not going to be the shooting script until the film's already done.
Yeah.
So, how they get past all that, I don't know, but.
And it's also such a sticky situation because, like, you can look at a million action movies and be like, oh, well, that's just Die Hard.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. The phrase "die hard on a blank" is a phrase for a reason, and yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah, it looks
especially because John Carpenter doesn't seem like that litigious of a guy. He seems pretty laid back as far as these things go.
Yeah, it looks like they paid out a total of $450,000 to the writer of Escape from New York and. Nick Castle was the writer, and to MGM, and then John Carpenter. That was all kind of split amongst them. So not like a ton of money, but...
Yeah, I mean, that sounds to me like there's some kind of union arrangement at work as well.
Yeah, and this happened in 2015. So it was 3 years after the movie.
Does, I don't have any numbers in front of me. Does it say how much the movie grossed?
On a $20 million budget, it made $32.2 million.
Okay.
So not a lot. Which, I mean, I don't remember when this came out, like what month and what it was up against, but I don't remember a lot of like advertising for the movie either.
No, it was early. It was like March or April or something.
Yeah.
I remember that, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I specifically remember seeing a trailer online for the first time, and them showing the scene that would later be... It's like the scene where after he like changes her hair and everything, and they're walking through the prisoners, and being like, oh, this super has like an Arkham Asylum vibe, because it was like a year after that game came out.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because The crazy Irish guy, the little brother, who's kind of the catalyst of everything.
Yeah. He's great.
He is straight up like, I mean, granted the release was too close for it to be like an actual thing, but he and Voss from Far Cry 3 are like straight out of the same playbook.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny watching him because he's basically just an Irish version of that guy, except he was in a movie that came out 9 months before Far Cry 3 did.
Wow, is Far Cry 3 that old?
Yeah, that was December of 2012.
Oh my god. Well, I guess they did just announce 6, so.
Yeah. Yep.
Man.
Which I watched that leaked. They leaked the French version of the trailer that they're debuting tomorrow.
Oh really?
Which and it's I'm sure it's taken down by now, but as far as Far Cry always has to do that thing where they have the villains show up and they just do something extremely extremely disturbing and messed up. I think this one, granted the trailer was in French, so I couldn't understand what was being said, but I think in terms of villainous character introductions and things that they do, this is probably my favorite that they've done.
Really? Well, they got Giancarlo Esposito, so.
Yeah, but specifically, it's what he does in the trailer that I think is. I was watching it and I was like, okay, this is entertaining. And it's one of those like pre-rendered CG trailers. There's no gameplay to it.
Yeah.
But as character introductions go, I think it's better than the whole waking up with your head in the sand and there's this crazy dude with a mohawk talking at you.
Yeah.
So when folks see that tomorrow, that'll be good.
Yeah. Any hint at where this one's taking place?
They said this is so the trailer makes it very clear that it's in South America this time.
Okay.
They're clearly ripping off kind of a Venezuela situation, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're probably playing as some revolutionary who's trying to overthrow a dictator, and everybody's got Libertad written on their arms.
Yeah.
And they're throwing Molotov cocktails, and there's surplus AKs everywhere, that type of thing.
Oh, all right. I'm always more than willing to check out a new Far Cry game.
Yeah, but it's funny because that poster came out yesterday.
Yeah.
And the logo, so it says Far Cry 6 on top of the poster, and then underneath that, there's some kind of, it looks like Chinese characters to me.
Oh, really? I didn't take a good look at it. I just saw like that the poster was out, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. They said they're going to do more tomorrow, so.
Yeah, so in English, it's got Far Cry 6, and then beneath it, in the exact same typeface, it's a Chinese version of Far Cry 6.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought, oh, they're going to Hong Kong. Like, this actually sounds like pretty topical. Like, this would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But no, apparently it's South America. So.
Oh, well. I'll be interested to see what they got. I know a lot of people is like, oh, you can't just do another one of those, but a part of me is also just like, I'm more than happy to just sit back and let a Far Cry game come out and be a Far Cry game all the time.
Yeah, it's only been 2 years since, well, by the time this one comes out, it will have been 2 years since Far Cry New Dawn, which to me does not sound like enough time to give that series new ideas that it needs right now.
No, and that's kind of what they've been doing for a while, because after 4, they did that, like, 10,000 BC style one, and then 5 was shortly after that. Like, it seems like they're doing the smaller games in between the bigger games somehow, but...
Yeah, and then, I don't know, 5 was weird because it was very pretty, and they got rid of the whole towers thing.
Yeah.
Which was nice, but somebody pointed this out. It's like an over-caffeinated version of Far Cry 3 and 4. It's like you're on the road and you get stopped like every 90 seconds because there's a new thing happening.
It's actually the first one I didn't bother to finish.
I did. You didn't miss... Well, I don't know. The ending of that game goes in a really...
I've heard what the ending is, just from like podcasts spoiling it.
Well, and it's kind of given away in Far Cry New Dawn, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ending of that game is pretty cool. It does not salvage the 20 hours or so it takes to get there, but... Yeah,
it's one I jump in every now and then just to like, let's shoot some stuff up, and then I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they should put it in space and just call it Lockout. I'd be down with that.
I'd be down with that. So, I guess here's my question for you, since I'm a guest on the show. This is a screenwriting podcast. Let's talk about the 3-star to 5-star ceiling. What would you have changed about this script to take the ceiling up to 5 stars?
I mean, it's easy to sit there and say the budget, just because we are correct in saying that, like, the special effects are atrocious nowadays. It does not hold up. It definitely needs to be a little bigger, in the sense that as I was watching it, I did forget that there were some cool set pieces in here. Like, I do like the gravity sequence where he's like, he has to get across that spot, and like it'll hold you up or whatever, but he's fighting a prisoner during that. I would maybe have a couple more like blown out moments like that, because action wise there's not a lot going on. It's a lot of people running down hallways away from groups of prisoners, just looking back and shooting. I would, you got the motorcycle chase in the beginning, but that's, as we said before, it's kind of trash. I would have put more money towards that chase sequence, made that a little bigger and more dynamic. I would have added 1 or 2 more set pieces like throughout the movie, and maybe because like the final confrontation with the villains, there really isn't one. Like the crazy brother kills the other one, and then the station gets blown up pretty much.
Yeah.
So I guess I think how we've been talking, this movie really survives on its characters. That I look at this movie just on a character level, and I want 30 movies starring Guy Pearce's character. Like, I would take a whole series of him just being the snarky asshole action hero.
Yeah, it feels like there could be an alternate timeline where like this is his lane,
Yeah.
Where like he is Earth 2's Jason Statham or whatever, and he's just as successful in his career for that, because he's that versatile and can do it.
Yeah. Like, just looking at the movie on a screenplay level, it follows all the beats, like it's hitting the timestamps it needs to hit to, keep the movie going. And as we said, the movie moves at a great pace. What you were saying, adding more into that, like, political intrigue of what's going, like, who is this guy that he says is such a good friend of his that died in the beginning? Like, we don't get anything about him. Like, expand that out, add more of the subplot into the plot of the movie. Like, they intersect them really well, like how he has to go up to the prison to try to find his buddy, to find where the case is. But there's just not a lot of that overall in the film.
Yeah. And we don't even know, like, the thing that's funny to me about this is that, Luc Besson, he kind of makes action movies. I mean, a lot of his action movies are set in America or have to do with American institutions. So he's normally pretty sound about that kind of stuff. But this was funny because we don't know which specific branch of the law enforcement Guy Pearce works for, but he's being treated by the Secret Service. Yeah. And it's like, what exactly is their jurisdiction for dealing with this dude? It's not the Secret Service's job to manage state secrets or whatever. They're there to protect political officials.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense why they're intersecting. Unless it's because it's the death of that his friend, who I think is like a general or something.
I think he said colonel. There's something. Yeah. Some kind of military rank in there.
So that's maybe your loose connection there, but it still doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I obviously could have, pushed this film's pedigree a bit higher. The only thing I would really want, if I can increase the budget and kind of sort of blow out the story, is that as a prison movie, there's no real depth to this besides the fact that it's in space. And, you get some stuff. Okay, they've got a gravity thing sequence. They've got a guy getting shot out of an airlock. Like, your kind of standard space moves that you do. Yeah. But I would love to just have, my favorite thing about prison films is sort of seeing all the procedure that goes into the security of the facility.
Yeah.
So
there's really none of that.
There's none of that. You just said, we put these guys to sleep. We put them on ice. And then when they wake up, we have absolutely no countermeasures in place to stop them from completely overrunning the facility.
Yeah, I think there's one moment, like, so when the guy first breaks out in the beginning, there's a dude who's trying to type on a keypad that's supposed to, like, basically put sleeping gas in the building to knock him out, but then the dude shoots him before he finishes, and that's literally the only countermeasure we see.
Yeah, it's like you don't have any kind of, recess areas that people can retreat to and kind of, hunker down until, like, there's no panic room or anything inside the prison for the people who actually run it.
Like, he shouldn't have even been able to get out of the interrogation room. That should have been locked.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And so that kind of stuff, I'm trying to think of a recent example. Have you seen Brawl in Cell Block 99?
No, not yet. It's one that's been on my
okay,
list.
Yeah. There's a cool kind of, there's a series of prisons in that movie. And one of the cooler aspects of the film, it has nothing really to do with the story or even the exposition, but, like, you kind of see what the security procedures are at each of the prisons, and you understand how they, not only how they work, but also how they kind of increase in intensity and perhaps illegality as the level of security gets ratcheted up.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a really good sort of credible idea of what Vince Vaughn is dealing with in that movie, like how badly he's kind of descended into the heart of darkness, so to speak. And having more of that kind of just like prison architect procedure type stuff that can really kind of, because this facility, it's not, to use a wrestling term, like it just no-sells everything.
I understand that reference.
Yeah, I mean, it's not imposing at all.
No, like, give us, like, a scene where they're walking through the prison and somebody's just explaining the security, like, even that much.
Even that much, or show someone who tried to escape previously and, like, what happens to them if they try to do that. Like, you've got to build up the credibility of this place in order to, I think, get the most out of it. But
yeah,
as we said, the film kind of survives in spite of that, right? Because it is so straightforward.
Yeah,
but
it's a simple
cool
movie that's fun to throw on, and the characters are going to keep you compelled and make you laugh. Like, it almost feels like an action comedy at times.
Mm-hmm.
But I had this weird idea in my head of, like, so Sylvester Stallone keeps making these escape plan movies somehow, even though nobody's watching them. So maybe Escape Plan 4 can just be Lockout 2.
Mm-hmm.
And just finally get some nuance in there on the prison.
I mean, so he's done 3 of those.
Yes,
correct.
And
so the first one is just him, right?
It's him and Schwarzenegger.
Okay, so Schwarzenegger's in the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then Batista enters the second one, I think.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
And
yeah.
then
See, I was
50
thinking it was.
Cent.
Oh. Okay. All right. Yeah. Actually, I gotta give 50 Cent some props. I watched this movie the other night called Den of Thieves. Have you seen that?
No. Is that? I didn't know he was in that. I was actually, because I was on Letterboxd today after I logged Lockout, and I think I clicked on your review of that, and then that just led me to the page of the movie, and I didn't realize who all was in that. I didn't know Gerard Butler was in it. I didn't know 50 Cent was in it.
So I didn't watch it because I was like, Gerard Butler and 50 Cent, like, that's not selling me on your movie. It's Gerard Butler's in like 9 action movies a year. What's gonna make this one special? But
yeah.
50 Cent is really good in that movie because the director knows exactly how to use him, which is not very much at all. He's mainly in the background, and then when he says stuff, he's very stoic and curt, and it, like, fits with his character really well.
Yeah.
And so he basically, it's one of those performances where the director kind of arranged everything so that he didn't have to do any acting, and the film is way better as a result, and it looks pretty good on his resume because of that.
Who directed that movie? Do you know?
It's a guy. It was his first movie. I want to make sure I get his name right. I think it's Christian Gudegast.
Oh, okay.
It starts with a G, and I think he's produced a bunch of stuff and worked on other films in various capacities or whatever. But this was his first big feature release, and it's a really, really good heist crime flick.
Okay. I might check that out this weekend, actually.
Yeah, it's long, but highly recommended.
Okay, yeah, I've been watching a lot of movies lately, and this is my first weekend off in a while, so I'm like looking for stuff to watch. So,
yeah, and that one too. Also, like, it's not a prison, but the target in that movie is a Federal Reserve Bank, and they do the whole thing where they go into the procedure of how the Federal Reserve protects all its money and how everything works to keep it operating correctly. And so you get to see just how big of a threat this place is before they try and take it down, and it's really good.
Which, yeah, like something like that would have really helped Lockout. Is like you like maybe add some crazy security measures, like the laser room in Resident Evil. It's like, oh, we got to get through this hallway or something.
Yeah,
just add some more danger to because, like I said, it's a lot of people running down hallways, just turning and shooting.
It's funny you mentioned that because you know how like the laser room, that scene's like what 2 minutes, but it's just really, really good escalation. It's like, okay, if it hits you, it's gonna cut whatever it hits. It's like, okay, we jump on the ceiling and it cuts that guy's knife.
Yeah,
you know, and then it comes and it just transforms into this huge grid, and the guy's just like, oh shit, you know, I'm toast.
Yeah, because the first time it just travels across the room. The second time it's like, oh, it's coming lower, and the guy tries to jump, but it goes up with him and cuts him in half. You know, it's like, oh shit, you know, it's just getting worse as that scene goes on. It's a great scene.
Yeah. I just learned that last night that someone tried to make a horror movie that's just all about that one concept.
Are you talking about the Red Letter Media?
Yes, the Aqua Slash.
Yeah, I watched that last night as well.
Oh my gosh, I was because they showed that one clip when they were talking about Vast of Night, and I'm like, wait, that looks crazy. And then they get to the review and they're like, no, this is actually the entire conceit of the movie. It's just this one thing.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Which honestly,
I kind of want to watch it.
The Resident Evil movies did that one scene like 4 times as well. So if it works, it works.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think I've only seen 2 of those. I've seen the first one. I've seen.
They're bad.
Whichever one has Nemesis in it. Yeah,
it's the second one.
You know. Okay, yeah, I did not feel the need to watch further after that.
I will say the first 3 totally watchable. The second one's the worst out of those 3. I think they're all bad movies, but I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them.
Yeah.
But I think the first 3 are all like kind of decently made. The second one is just like it becomes too much of an action movie and it's really bad. But the third one is like kind of the best of those original 3. And then it just goes off the deep end from there. Like the 5th one is, which there are 6. The 5th one made me increasingly angry as I watched it. Because, like, speaking of screenwriting, it's just a lot of things that don't make sense. And I was just getting so frustrated. Because they're literally just throwing things in from the video games without any explanation. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with Resident Evil, but there's in Resident Evil 4, it's not like the T virus anymore. It's a parasite called the Las Plagas. And there's a scene in the 5th movie, at the end of the movie, where Michelle Rodriguez injects the Las Plagas into her neck, and the Leon Kennedy character says, it's the Las Plagas, and they never once tell you what that means. It's just supposed to be like, oh, the fans know. But I'm like, the fans aren't the only people watching this stupid movie. Like, what do you do? Like, I was so angry by that point in the film.
I didn't know Leon Kennedy was in the films.
Yeah, they got a lot of the major characters in by the end. I think all of them. Because Jill was in 2. Claire and Chris were in 4. Leon, Ada, and Barry Burton were in 5. And then Wesker was in 3 through 6. He was in kind of all of them.
Does the phrase Jill sandwich get uttered in any of the movies?
No.
Oh, that's a...
Oh, she also does. She does come back in 5 as well. I forgot.
Okay. You know, Paul W.S. Anderson is making a Monster Hunter movie.
Yes, I do, and that just got delayed actually till next year.
Oh well, no surprise.
Yeah, as everything is. Because man, he can make good movies. Because like, I will go to bat for at least 3 of his films. The Mortal Kombat movie. I'm a really big fan of Soldier, and Event Horizon.
Soldier is the Kurt Russell.
Yeah, it takes place in the Blade
Yes.
Runner universe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's actually references to stuff in Blade Runner in that movie.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, oh, they technically exist in the same universe, but it kind of doesn't matter.
Huh. Yeah, no, I remember liking that movie as a teenager.
I remember it being really good.
I don't know how it will hold up now, but I remember liking it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good parts will still be really good today, but I think a lot of the middle will be a little tough to get through.
Yeah, I mean, much like Guy Pearce, Kurt Russell is capable of elevating pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So, even maybe not Escape from L.A. I don't know.
that was the first one I saw.
Yeah, that whole surfing sequence is pretty rough, but everything else, yeah,
It does have
a nice
Steve
little way to come
Buscemi
full
and Bruce
circle.
Campbell, though.
It's got Bruce Campbell's in it? Oh, man.
Yeah, briefly.
Okay. I've seen about half of it, so I don't know.
It's literally
everything
the
about it,
same
but-
movie as the first one. Like, it beat for beat, it's just a carbon copy, except it's in LA this time.
Mm.
But
Carpenter's got to make money as much as anybody else, I guess.
yeah, even for suing for this movie, because, hey, only we can make the same movie twice.
Yeah, that's true.
So like coming back to this in 2020, did you still enjoy it? Like, is it still like, do you still kind of have the same feelings on it, or is it a little less or more?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I'd be happy to watch it again tonight. It's just one of those things. I felt like when I saw it the first time, it was like I could watch that whenever.
Yeah.
And then circumstances being what they are, I just never did. And it's like that's not a problem. I don't need to watch it whenever, but I'd be happy to, just because I think it's a perfectly entertaining piece of pulp.
Yeah, 100%. And this was honestly the first movie I remember Guy Pearce from, because I didn't see a lot of his like better movies until way later. Like, now LA Confidential is one of my favorite movies, but I didn't see that movie when it came out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I remember walking in and my parents watching that movie, and it was the scene where like Russell Crowe is like busting some model and she's naked. He's like busting her out of a porn house or something.
Yeah.
I remember I was like 9 years old and I walked in and my parents watching that scene. And they were like, "Get out!" But so, yeah,
it's such a good movie.
Yeah, that movie's terrific.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like noir, like crime stuff, and that's like one of my favorite.
Mm-hmm. And another instance where, I guess that was kind of Guy Pearce's type back then. He was really clean cut and kind of, playing a type of hyper intelligent character archetype. But in this, he's kind of doing the exact opposite.
Yeah,
and still crushing it.
And I would even say like in Iron Man 3 a little bit. He's got the same kind of personality, and like he's very snarky and stuff, and quick-witted in Iron Man 3 as well. Which I know me and you kind of feel the same way about that movie versus a lot of the other population. But
it's top 5 MCU for me.
100%.
Yeah, and he is. I mean, his role is kind of interesting because I do acknowledge like it is a cheat. Because Marvel was clearly like pulling their collars about how to depict the Mandarin. Which it feels. I think they've cracked that nut because they're bringing Shang-Chi into the MCU. And they're going to retcon the actual Mandarin, and they can make it something more appropriate and traditional. But as far as Guy Pearce in that movie goes, like his job is to kind of be this sort of bland alternative to who we think is the villain in Ben Kingsley. But he plays that really well because it allows him to kind of work underneath the scenes and, manage the table setting to put his plan in motion. So I love the twist in that movie because Pierce is underplaying it the whole time. And like, he's kind of doing, like you said, he's kind of got the Shane Black coat of polish on him.
Yeah.
But he's more understated than everybody else in the film. And so I think that's what makes the twist carry over, is not that when he reveals himself to be the Mandarin, he's suddenly this like wacky character or anything. He's just someone who very carefully distracted people with one thing until he could leap into action on the other side. And so the villain turn in that works very well for me because he's not trying to outact anybody else.
I couldn't agree more. And I gotta give you credit for something. You have maybe my favorite Shane Black tweet of all time, which is, what if we force him to take Christmas out of his movies and he made his first bad movie? Because that's exactly what happened. And I think about that all the time. Talking about the Predator, for anyone who doesn't know.
There's no Christmas in the Predator, and it's awful.
I laughed so hard when I saw that movie. And it's not a comedy, but it was the best comedy of the year.
It is. I mean, you can tell it was one thing, and then the studio came in and just fucking ruined it.
It's so bad. Because
the whole Predator Iron Man suit at the end.
Oh my god.
It's like, what are you smoking,
and
guys?
That's not even my least favorite part. Like, literally when the Predator is speaking through the translator and you're hearing a Predator like spoken word for the first time, I was literally laughing so hard. I was like, what is this movie?
It just, I wasn't mad at that movie when I saw it. Like, I was looking forward to it and my hopes were crushed, but I wasn't really upset because it felt like, well, none of this was really Shane Black's fault.
Yeah.
There's a handful of scenes in that movie that feel like stuff that he wrote, mainly having to do with like Thomas Jane and Keegan Michael Key and them.
Yeah.
Everything else felt like the studio just came in and strong-armed him, and it's like, well, sometimes that happens. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like a Shane Black movie. I'd love to, like, if after some time to hear an interview about it.
So what I'm saying is, release the black cut.
Oh my god.
That's what I want.
Just release every cut of every movie at this point.
Mm-hmm.
HBO is setting a deadly precedent.
I'm well, we don't need to talk about that, but because I know I was actually a very, like, in terms of kind of abstract concepts, the idea of a Snyder cut of Justice League, I was like, yeah, I want to see that. That sounds really cool.
I want to see every version of every movie, but that fandom made me not want it to happen so bad.
Yeah, and then I didn't realize there's this whole other undercurrent of, typical internet bullshittery happening alongside it. So,
yeah.
But apparently David Ayer is like now lobbying to get his cut of Suicide Squad going.
Yeah, which I kind of hope they just give it to him. Like, I thought that movie was really terrible, but I would still want to see his version.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too, because I don't know what the return on investment looks like for streaming services. Because Netflix, when they do release data, it's always the most asinine sort of like, 70% of our viewers watch the first 2 minutes of this, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we heard that Warner Brothers is going to put $30 million into this so that Snyder can get the CG shots he needs for his cut. I guess if the return on that is good, I think this could kind of become a regular thing.
Yeah.
Depending on how and when and if theaters come back into play as a moneymaker for studios. If you've got a movie that costs $60 million and you only made back 2/3 of your budget, and you suddenly fork over another $10 million to get another cut of it, and then release it on streaming to a subscriber base that's 100 million people or whatever. This could completely change. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to, but the idea of this becoming maybe not commonplace, but not unheard of.
Yeah, I mean,
think it'd
the
be
thing
really
is, we don't know. Like, what if it is super successful? And then other studios are like, okay. And there's also rumor that, Joel Schumacher, who just passed away, there was like, there's a 178-minute version of Batman Forever that's like a lot darker. And I'm like, let me see that. Like, I would much rather see that, honestly.
That's what, 2 hours and 58 minutes?
Something like that.
Yeesh.
Yeah, I don't know if I want a 3-hour version of Batman Forever, but I'm curious about
There's also the other question of, like, okay, at what point do these just become work prints?
Yeah.
Because the mini-series of The Hateful Eight that they put on Netflix, that's basically just the work print of the movie.
Yeah.
and they cut it into episodes.
And that's what they're talking about possibly doing with Justice League as well. They're saying possibly
Yeah.
a 4-hour cut split into episodes. Which you tell me 4 hours, I'm like, I don't want to watch that. I barely got through the two.
Yeah, no. I mean, I as someone who likes the director's cut of Batman versus Superman, even that sounds bad to me. Yikes. Oh well. You know what doesn't have any of those problems? Lockout.
It doesn't. You're in, you're out.
It's just 90 minutes. You get a good, decent action movie with fun performances.
You could watch it twice in a day and not be mad about it.
Yeah, it is perfect unto itself.
Yeah. Like, this was a good excuse for me to add it to my collection because I didn't own it. So I was like, okay, it was like $12 on iTunes for the unrated cut. So I was like, all right, sure, give me that. So now I often, like, you know, I play a lot of video games and I play a lot of games that I don't, like, what I would call podcast games, where I just, you know, I'm swinging around in Spider-Man, so I have my iPad set up and a movie going or something. And this is easily one I'd be like, all right, let's click on Lockout and just have it going while I'm playing Spider-Man.
Yeah. I mean, I listen to all my podcasts pretty much while playing Destiny, so
yeah,
I know exactly what you mean.
Oh yeah, you're one of two people I allow on my Twitter timeline to sit there and talk about Destiny. So
I always, every time I tweet about Destiny, I'm always immediately just like, why'd you do that? Nobody who follows you gives a rat's ass about this.
It's kind of my way of keeping up with that game, honestly. Because, like, I've never played I played the first one, and I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I have the second one because it was free on PlayStation Plus. But I've never touched the second one.
You are not the first person to tell me that. I am the canary in the Destiny coal mine for several people. Which is fine, because I think if you look at where the game is now versus where it was 3 years ago, whenever it came out, it's a much better game these days. But, you know, it took 3 years and like 250 hours to get there. So.
Yeah, and I've considered jumping in as I'm like kind of winding down on a lot of the games I own, because I still have a few that I've had sitting on my shelf for a while that I've never played, and I'm trying to like get through those. And every now and then I'm scrolling through my games on PlayStation and I see Destiny 2 and I'm like, do I want to do this? But you know, it's just the base version. I don't have any of the DLC or anything. So
yeah, and it's gotten so bloated and complicated that like the big story for this season is about how they are in the lore preparing to take out a bunch of planets.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening right now, which is honestly really cool, because you're like, okay, the game is way too big right now as it is.
Is that the whole thing they teased with like the tower getting hit or whatever, the big event they did?
Yeah, so that was the story of the last season, which is the ship that was scuttled that was going to destroy the sun has been turned around and is now going to destroy the tower in retaliation. And then we spent all season spooling up these special satellites that can fire missiles at it. And then basically everybody went to the tower and just watched this really, really long animation of all the missiles hitting the ship, and then it blows up. It took like an hour and a half. It was...
Yeah, I was kind of following people on Twitter the day that happened.
So the most typical Destiny kind of thing that could have happened that way, but like in concept and execution, like execution could have been better, but like in concept it worked really well. And they've actually, I think, learned how to tell these kind of big season-long, like 2 or 3 month season-long stories in like decent chunks. And they've been retconning a bunch of stuff that didn't make sense about the first game, and they've started to bring all that table setting into play with like what the darkness is and all this other stuff. And it's much less pathetic than it used to be into Destiny, is what I'm saying. So
if that's what you have to keep telling yourself.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny now though. I was looking at my PS4 earlier, and like Ghost of Tsushima comes out next week, and that's going to be like
I
the last.
know about that game so bad.
Yeah, that's going to be like the last game I play on my PS4. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like before the new stuff comes out. I mean, I'm going to keep it because there's a Blu-ray player in there, and I want to make sure I have one of those no matter what. But
yeah,
it's kind of funny thinking about, you know, console life cycles and what realistically you're going to do with your gaming time. Because like with movies, you know, I just buy movies, or I have stuff on streaming services, and it's like, yeah, I can just watch those whenever I want. But with games, it's like, okay, I've done that. I'm going to move on.
Yeah. There's only like a handful I keep coming back to. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Anyway.
samurai games are like the one thing I've like this generation has been missing. So I really hope Ghost of Tsushima turns out. Like I know we have some friends that have their hands on it, and I've thought about messaging them and be like, hey, thumbs up or thumbs down, but I've resisted.
I was, the way publishers schedule review embargoes is so irritating these days.
Yeah.
Because they've got like 2 or 3 dates in there. And the first date is, okay, here's when you can brag on social media that you have a copy of this game.
Yeah.
And so I saw, again, we're not going to name names, but we know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
I saw them on Twitter sitting in their couches getting ready to do some samurai ninja shit.
Yeah,
and I was
a couple
like,
people
man,
posting the title screen or whatever. And
yeah, I was like, we're not friends right now, okay? This is obnoxious.
I just want to know. I don't buy a lot of
Yeah.
games new nowadays, but the second I see good reviews on that, I'm probably picking that up.
Yeah, and I'm on summer vacation now, so it's perfect for me. Just like a nice big open world type thing. But I was thinking it was funny. There were people on Twitter when Assassin's Creed Valhalla got leaked, who were like, damn it, they just won't make the samurai ninja game that we've been wanting them
Which
to make.
I'm one of those people.
Or whatever. Yeah, and then Sony was like, hey, we've got this exact thing you're asking for right here. Oh, and it comes out in 2 months.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So it looks good, and I'm excited for that. What they're calling the Kurosawa mode.
Yeah, I just saw that. I didn't know that was the name of it. I saw that today. So.
I think when they showed it on live stream, they didn't call it that. They said we have a black and white filter and a Japanese language track. And then I think people on Twitter just started calling it Kurosawa mode, and so that's become the bullet point for them.
That's kind of perfect.
Because they made this whole show, this whole big PR stunt where they were like, hey, we went and got permission from his estate to call it this.
That's awesome.
Which is, it's pretty cool. Not going to lie.
All right, well,
Yep.
I think this has been great. I knew that when I kind of wanted to do a feature like this, that you were kind of one of the first people I wanted to reach out to, because I follow you a lot on social media, and we've known each other for a while now, and you're one of the smartest people I know talking about movies. So.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And I will say, go follow Adam on Letterboxd if you have Letterboxd, and everybody should have one.
Yes, I follow everybody on Letterboxd, so if you follow me, I'll follow you back.
Yeah, it's maybe my favorite social media app.
It's no joke. It's the best social media site. Easy.
Yeah.
There's like, as far as I know, like, just because the way it's so laser focused on one thing, that actually reduces the amount of negativity or like potential exposure to negativity because of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, most of the people I follow don't even write reviews of stuff. They just log it and they give it a score.
Yeah, that's kind of what I review every now and then, but I'm mostly just like logging. Yeah.
And like, I try to review everything because I want to, I think it's a good exercise. Just like, no, you have to vocalize what you think about this movie. Like, even if, sometimes you watch, like the movie I watched last night was like a quirky indie drama type thing. And I was like, I don't really know what I want to say about this.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good sort of creative habit to kind of force yourself to articulate something, even if it's a vague feeling that you can't really get a handle on yet. And what's nice about Letterboxd is that they have a feature that allows you to go back and like reassess things later. And it just like fits perfectly within the framework of the social media site. You can change your opinion, you can change your score, and you can denote like how things changed and how much time passed in between watching stuff. And like that to me is just, it's really transparent and it's just super interesting and useful.
Yeah. So, I've been getting to the point where I at least try to write at least one sentence like on my reviews, especially for something I either haven't seen in a long time or my first time watch or whatever. Other times I'll be like, I watched this with a commentary or whatever when I log rewatches. For example, my Lockout review is, I wish they made 30 of these, and that's all I said.
Yeah, and you can also, if the listeners, haven't seen Lockout and watch it, you can watch that movie and immediately know what Jeremy is talking about.
Yeah, if you're following me, it pops up all your friends of like, oh, here's what they gave it. Which you and one other person are the only other people who have logged that movie on mine.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did the other person give it?
They gave it a 2.
Ridiculous.
He said, in looking at his first sentence, he says Guy Pearce isn't funny, so he's wrong.
That's ridiculous. What?
Yeah, he's kind of a snobby movie guy, so he's like a podcaster.
That's the worst take. I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, man, thanks for coming on and doing this. I know we already have another movie planned for a return.
Do we want to give that away or not?
Yeah, we can give it away. I'm not sure when it'll happen, but
yeah. So the other movie we talked about recording is 2017's Ghost in the Shell, which I am a massive fan of. I adore that movie so much, and
I've only seen it once, and it was at work where I could only like kind of half pay attention to it. Like I remember coming out of it with like positive, but I'm excited to like sit down and give it an honest watch and then hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I've watched it probably, 8 or 9 times at this point, and it's another movie like Lockout that's really derivative and has a lot of DNA and connective tissue that you can look at and say, oh, this is from this and this is part of that and stuff. But
yeah.
I think it's a really good synthesis of all those things, and I also, I guess depending on where you talk about this film, you're going to run into certain opinions about the casting choices in that movie.
Yes.
And I have very strong opinions on that, which we'll talk about those later.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that.
I'm good to know that you have strong opinions, because I was actually curious if that was going to be a big part of the conversation or not. So
that whole controversy is something that really irritates me. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. So little teaser nugget for the next time.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, man. Well, do you have anything to plug?
Well, no shows because of COVID.
Yeah.
So comedy's canceled until 2021 probably, if then. So I'm not doing much right now, but if you want, you can follow me on Letterboxd at Contrarian, which is contrarian but with a D, because my last name is Condra. That's me on Letterboxd and Twitter. And yeah, I had a blast doing this. It was great to come on and talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks.